Hey, Jeff, go ahead and start. I'm still in my meeting.
Okay. How's everyone doing?
I'm good, brother Jeff. How are you?
Doing all right.
Good.
Sorry about your loss of your uncle, Steve.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how old was he?
83.
Okay, that's a pretty long life, but
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I hope I get to that.
right. Yes, I hear you.
I hope I get to that. Still tough.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Was it
Got
natural causes or something else? I don't want to get
yeah.
too personal, but
Yes. Natural causes.
okay.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. I forgot the Milwaukee Brewers come on at 8 o'clock. Now 7 o'clock.
Well, we're gonna start in about a minute.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
should have some people coming in here pretty soon as time goes on, because that's usually what happens. So people, just a heads up, Clarence is not here, at least not in paying attention wise. Clarence is at another meeting. So he might be coming on here maybe near the end of our meeting. Uh, so if you have any questions about membership or anything with IBO or anything like that, he probably can put that stuff in the chat. Um, I'm kind of flying solo, so I cannot check everything the same way. A little more difficult when I got this many people and you by yourself. So, and I'm also kind of presenting something as well. Um, but we're at 7 o'clock, so we're gonna kind of get started because kind of have a lot to cover or a lot of things that I feel are important. Everybody can hear me okay, correct? I'm on a different microphone, so I just want to make sure I'm being heard. Um,
Sure.
Loud and clear, bro.
okay, all right. So yeah, so here we are for another week of meetings. Uh, Before we get started, again, we do this every Monday. We plan to do this most every Monday. Um, Again, these are the usual suspects that are here. Gary is actually not here either because Gary had to pick up his wife from the airport. Tracy Carruthers is normally here. He's with Clarence because they're in a meeting for, I think, with Chicago Public Schools right now. So this is kind of why I'm flying solo. Clarence, obviously, is one of the assigners for the Chicago Public Schools, one of four assigners for the Chicago Public Schools, both boys and girls. They are not here right now. I'm here by myself. So again, uh, we're kind of at the point where we've reached October. So all the books and stuff have been sent out. I think we're in an off year for veterans. So if you did not put in for uh, the rules book, you will not get one through the IHSA. But you can also get one through the National Federation's their mobile app that they have that is relatively new. These are the important websites that you need to look at or look through because it has a lot of the information. And of course, IBO, who myself and Clarence are interpreters for. Gary probably will be sworn soon, officially. But as our membership rises, but these are the main things that are coming up. Again, just want to reiterate what we're doing. This is kind of at the help of with Gary. We're trying to kind of help his vision about how he wants the state of Illinois to be all on the same page. Basically provide some professional training for all IHSA basketball officials, teach the National Federation rules, signals, and positioning, help officials meet and comply with all IHSA requirements, and provide IHSA officials with the knowledge, skills, tools to officiate a basketball game consistently throughout the state of Illinois. Again, our main goal is that for wherever you are in the state, we're trying to make sure that we do stuff regardless of what league you work, regardless of where you are in the state, because when we get to the state tournaments and stuff like that, we need all to be on the same page and to enforce rules appropriately and properly. So that's that's one of our goals. And obviously, we want to help you get a little better as officials. Also, as I said, because we've kind of going into October, a lot of preseason meetings are either started or about to start throughout your local officials associations throughout the state. Please attend those. We never try to take you away from those, even if it's on the same night. Just happens to be Monday is the best night for us and most people, because most associations do not meet on Monday, but there are a lot of them that meet on Sunday and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. So, and obviously if you work other sports, that might be difficult to get to some of those, but please join your local officials association. I'm a big proponent of one. Also, those who don't know, I'm a co-chair of the Central Officials Association in Chicago that basically services the Chicago Chicago Catholic Schools. I'm sorry. I'm also a member of AOA, which is Athletic Officials Association, which is the longest running officials association in the country, which I'm a member as well. And I also belong to another basketball association called Joliet Basketball Officials Association. So I belong to multiple, almost every day of the week, especially during the month of October through November is very busy for me. So this is a labor of love, and we want to make sure that we help bring our knowledge to you guys as well. Now, before we get started, is there anyone that might have any questions about licensing or anything real quick that might be for good of the group if something happened to you? Now, if it's a real personal question, I might be able to answer. It might take us a little bit to answer, but if it's a general question about anything related to our licensing or books and stuff like that, I'd like to open that up for now. Just unmute yourself and ask and identify yourself because I can't see the screen.
Yeah, so
No
Jeff,
questions.
this Paul Schaefer. I know last
Yes.
week you guys mentioned, and I actually went on the IHSA, so they don't open up the test for another week or so,
Yes.
and you guys were saying that until we take the test, we can't work any games.
No, you can't work any high school games, and
Any
high school games do not start officially until the week before Thanksgiving. The girls' season starts that week, and then the boys start the week of Thanksgiving. So you can work any other level, of course, or any other like middle school, rec ball, anything, men's leagues. You can do all that. You cannot work Illinois High School Association game till you pass everything. That's a liability issue and a licensing issue. And they just want to make sure that you've completed everything. And that also includes, if we've not made this clear, you have to take a hate speech test and a concussion test, which is some videos that are reviewed with it. And they're open book. They're real easy to pass, but it's required by state law to pass those things as well to be in what they call full compliance. And if you're not in full compliance, assigners can actually take you off of games because the schools are not supposed to have officials who have not passed all that stuff. So, for some, and then again, I think the hate speech is every 2 years and the concussion might be every 3. I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong, but you don't have to take them every year, but you have to be in compliant within the time that you need to take it. And it's usually in July when that expires for most people.
Yeah, I did both of those. I did both of those
Right.
last year, and when I pulled up my IHSA, it said I was good till 2026
Right.
on both of those. So
Yeah,
If they
so
ever,
you should be fine on that. It's just IHSA games that are the issue. So you
okay.
can work anything else. And again, they want, you got to watch the rules, tests, and
Now,
all
is
of
that
those
just the
stuff.
high school level or is that middle school
Yeah,
too? Or
just high school,
gotcha. Okay, thanks.
There's no require. I know the IHSA has some requirements, but some IHSA starts. I think girls start way before the boys season does, which is, and also before the high school season. So those are not. That has nothing to do with that. That's just you being licensed is usually enough for that. But the high school requires these things to be taken care of all before you work your first game.
All right, thank you.
Oh, no problem. Any other quick questions about that?
Jeffrey, this is Bryce
Yes.
Michaels from the Springfield
Yes.
area. I know the middle school girls have started. I actually got an offer to do a game tomorrow night, and I accepted that offer, but there was some mess up on the schedule, so I ended up actually getting pulled off that game.
Okay.
So, how would you go about that though? If a coach goes, this is basically, I'll tell you basically what happened. The coach went above the AD's head and tried to bring me in instead of asking the AD first, and the AD already hired me. How would you go about doing that situation?
So let me understand this. Someone was trying to go over the 80s head to get you a game at that school.
The coach had contacted me without contacting his AD first. I found out today because his AD did call me and tell me, hey, you don't have that game. We already had that game completely covered. I don't know why you got called in on this game. My question is, how would you go about if something like that would happen to you?
Well, I'll say this: middle school is really up to middle school is usually different from high school because schools a lot of times are the assignment people for their own school. Just the way it is. There are places that there are assigners. We in Chicago, there's a lot of assigners that that assign middle school, but they're not all IESA schools, and that's the other thing. IESA schools are just it's the largest statewide organization in the country for middle school and elementary school. So that's unique in itself, but not every school in the state of Illinois is a member of IHSA. That's a middle school. There are some that have in-house leagues. So there are some little differences about that. Could be maybe even who they use for their licensing and stuff like that, if they're signing and stuff like that. And the IHSA has a big long tournament too that's at different classes, so that's kind of one of the ways that they do. But that being said, an individual game is not it's really up to whoever is working the game. So if a coach says something, coach might have some say about who works their games as opposed to not necessarily opposed to the AD, but the AD might, they might work in conjunction. So that's really up to that school. That there's
Jeff,
really no.
excuse me,
Go
Jeff.
ahead. Go ahead.
If I heard him right, he said the coach gave him the game, and the athletic director told him that he wasn't going to work the game. Is that correct?
Okay.
That is correct because
okay.
they already had the officials hired a year in advance.
Okay, and ultimately it's the athletic director, because I'm a coach. The athletic director has the final say so on who's going to work the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was getting to in a long way, is that really the athletic director is the ultimate person. Sometimes the coaches might be the one that schedules the actual game, but the athletic director, obviously, because they're the athletic director, might have veto power over certain assignments and situations. And that's within the organization. That really is beyond our pay grade of how that is decided. Because I've been called by one only to have some confusion with the other, so that does happen. So, but there's nothing that we really can do. All we can do is if they give us a contract and we sign it, they pretty much kind of have to honor it within ISA and IHSA rules. But that's all. But that's a whole different, depending on like it's an in-house in-house league or a local league. They may have other rules surrounding that, and there's really no way to completely answer that other than, the AD can say, no, I want to hire who I want to hire. So
right.
I hope that helps. I mean,
yeah, it definitely does. I know the AD personally because we used to be on rival teams. he called me and said, "Hey, I want you to know that we had these officials scheduled a year in advance. I don't know why you got called." And then he said, "I know somebody backed out, and that's what the issue was, but we also have their replacements for them scheduled a year in advance in case something would happen." But he did say he's keeping me on the list for later on in the year if needed. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's just.
and that's I'm sorry, Jeff. That's
Go
per
ahead, go ahead.
usual. That's per usual. As a coach, I know I probably would not hire anybody unless I confirmed it with my AD first, because I don't know it. I know who I want on the games, obviously, but I mean, he for whatever reason may not want that person doing games at our school. So again, that is the AD's. That is under the AD's description. I would suggest that any of you that are listening to this, if a coach calls, say, "Hey, do you have confirmation from your athletic director that I'll be on the game?" And that way, that'll shut all the confusion down.
Exactly.
thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. Okay. Are there any other questions similar, real quick, before we get into what I'm going to present for the most part? Because if there aren't any questions, we can kind of get into what I'm gonna present. Now, this is kind of let me kind of cover this. Okay, can everybody see the screen? You make the ruling, block charge. Everybody can see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well,
Just want to make sure. I'm trying to look. I'm trying. I got two screens going here. Okay, so what I want to present tonight is kind of go through what IBO has been doing for a long time. It's this thing called "You Make the Ruling." And if you have been a member, I know some of you are relatively new, but if you've been a member of NASO, for example, for some years, or familiar with Referee Magazine, Referee Magazine had for a long time produced the volumes of what they called "You Make the Ruling," and and they first did it with DVDs. I mean, it was DVDs for probably 13, 14 years. And then then it was the last few years that they produced it. They put them on zip drives, or it could be a download. And now they've kind of gone to a different format where they've kind of put it all on PowerPoint. And they have videos that kind of describe maybe multiple different categories. I'll try to show this because this year they go through different categories, and they do this every year, and they're usually videos from different IBO states and games that they get copies of, and they work in conjunction to get quality videos of things that are just kind of basic. And in the past, they have done them where basically a lot of them were, it's appeared to be varsity basketball for the most part, or at least 3-person crews or crews of 3. But now the entire library this year is crews of 2, which is probably a good tool, because now some of the plays in the situations that they show are going to basically be 2-person for everything. So every play is a 2-person play. And some of these are talking about just a call. Some of them will talk about the signals. Some of them will talk about the positioning of the officials, different things of that nature. I'm not going to go through every one tonight, but I wanted to pick about 2 or 3 different categories, and we'll go through them. And we're going to just kind of this is going to be an open discussion about plays and situations, because that's kind of what I do. I think I do the best is talk about video and using video to train, because we kind of got into some other little things for the most part that were conceptual, but now we want to kind of get into I want to start getting into the meat and guts of plays and situation. No, excuse me. So this is kind of how this is going to go. The first category that we're going to go through tonight And I said, I'm probably gonna go through maybe 2 other categories, depending on how much time we have. Um, block charge, and then I got a couple others. I kind of will randomly pick them, but the whole point of this is to be interactive. And again, I'm kind of flying blind, so I don't have anybody who can check the chat as much. Maybe Steve, you might help me out with that if you can, since you're on it, and if there's any questions. But this will be very interactive. We'll kind of get to some questions that we think are important. But we're gonna just kind of get to some plays.
I've been checking the chat. We're good.
Okay. And,
Yeah,
and again,
so have
but
I don't
go
know
ahead.
who the other guy is, Jeff, but so have I. So between the both of us, we'll get it. Don't back out there, brother.
Okay.
All right.
All right. All right. So this is the categories. This is basically 40 plays. Each category has about probably 5 or 6 plays each, or to some extent, maybe less than that, maybe about 3 plays or so. But there's about 40 plays that kind of go through everything. But the first category we're gonna go through is block charge. Now, what I want to do, this is why I want this to be interactive. So if you have a question, and if you know, if you can kind of say something in the chat, but if you think there's something you're not fully understanding, please unmute and identify yourself, so that I can't see the screen the same way while I'm putting this on the screen, and just kind of let's talk, because I also want to kind of poll everybody about some of these questions. And I want you to ask questions, and again, there's really no stupid question but the one you don't ask. So if you don't ask a question and we get through a play and you don't ask a question about it, now some of them are self-explanatory, some of them are real easy, but there might be some other elements to it, and there will be some things I will talk about, especially when it comes to mechanics and signals. So let's get into it. We're starting the category block charge. So this is kind of how this will go. So it'll say what the play is, or kind of what the play is. So the lead official rules a blocking foul and counts the basket on the play. Do you agree? And then we go through different categories, says what they are. A, yes, it is a blocking foul. B, no, it's a player control foul. No, it's a faking. No, this is faking being fouled, infraction by the defender, or no, this is incidental contact. So this is how the first play. And this play will run like 2-3 times, fast speed, slow speed. And then I think they run the last time will be fast speed again to kind of incident. So that's our first question. This is the play. So can everybody see that well? Okay. So we have a play in transition. Lead comes up and calls a foul. So, like we said, lead ruled a blocking foul. So which is it? How many people have A, it is a blocking foul? You can put it in the chat. Okay, how many people have B, it's a player control foul? How about C? Does anybody think this is a faking being fouled infraction by the defender? Or D, is this just incidental contact? Okay. But let me ask this. Does anybody think that this is a player control foul? If you do, unmute yourself and explain. And we're here to learn together. I just want an explanation if somebody has one. Does anybody have this is a player control foul that I can tell? I don't think I saw anybody in the chat say B. I did have somebody say C. Unmute yourself, Bryce, and tell me why you think this is C.
Based on what I saw there, and we can only call what we see. Typically, is that he backed himself into that ball. He wasn't getting.
Okay, you might have to speak up into your mic. I'm having a hard time hearing you with some interference.
Is this better? I got what I got out there. he wasn't hit hard enough to go into the wall. He backed up into it. So it'd be fake being back or delay a game in general.
Okay, so you think,
I got a question for him, Jeff.
yes, go ahead.
Bryce, how long have you been officiating?
This would be my first year other than special. I've been around basketball for 12 years.
That's not my question. My question is, how long have you been officiating?
This will be my first actually.
This will be your first year. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you think this is a faking being fouled infraction because of, and it was hard to hear you, so I'm trying to make sure I understand before, so we can, as a teaching point.
I think it's faking being fouled because he backed up into the wall after the contact, but I don't think the contact was hard enough to push him into the wall.
Okay. Does anybody disagree with this being a blocking foul as well? And again,
Oh, you
this is
said
why we're having this
disagree.
conversation.
You said disagree. Okay.
Because we're going to discuss it. I just want to see this. Somebody tell me why this is a blocking foul there. Go ahead and unmute and say, just tell me.
Okay, I had a blocking foul because the one thing that the player did that you can't do is he moved forward. You can move lateral or backwards, but you can't move forward. And he moved into the path of the player with the ball. That's why we got a blocking, and that was the reason why I asked how many years the young man had, because we're taught to referee the defense, and if you see the defense move forward, that's automatically blocking in me.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Again,
Who's
roughing the
speaking,
defense.
just so I know real quick. Who's
Excuse
speaking?
me?
Identify.
This
So
is
I know who's
Gabriel.
speaking.
My name is
Okay.
Gabriel. Gabriel.
No
Scott.
problem. That's why I'm
Okay.
asking. I can't see the screen. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm looking at the defender. He established legal guardian position. He had 2 feet on the floor. His torso was facing the offensive player. And I agree with the gentleman before me. He slightly moved forward into the offensive player, which made it a block.
Okay. Well, just so we're clear, this is a blocking foul, and kind of what was said about it being a blocking foul. And it's a blocking foul for a couple reasons. Okay, first off, what does it take to establish legal guarding position?
2 feet on the floor, torso facing the opponent.
Okay, facing the opponent. Doesn't say torso facing the opponent. By rule, just says facing the opponent. 2 feet on the floor at that point, and then what does it take to maintain legal guarding position? What can you do to maintain legal guarding position?
Move laterally, backwards, or obliquely.
Okay. Now, there's an element to this that is a little different. So what did the shooter do? What might be another factor here? Did the shooter go airborne?
Yes.
Okay. So if the shooter went airborne, does that change anything?
No.
Who said no? Tell me why no.
That was me, Jeff Steve Alexander.
Okay.
And I was waiting on one of the younger guys to get it, and just kind of was thinking outside of my head. But I'll say it doesn't change anything, because the guy on defense still move forward, and he has to allow the airborne shooter to come back down, space to come back down.
Well, let me ask this question. Maybe there's a better way I can answer this question. What is the requirement when a shooter goes airborne of the defender? Then what does the defender have to do? or not do?
The defender has to establish legal guard position prior to the offensive player's upward motion.
Or upward motion or anything else, other kind of motion?
Does it mention continuous motion or does it start on the top?
That's why I'm asking.
Hmm.
And I'm asking these questions, guys, because I want you to think through this. Because these are things that you got to think about when this play happens. So if we have a player that goes airborne, the defender has to be in legal guarding position. Now, that does not mean they have to face him. That does not mean that they have to be square. They have to be in legal guarding position before the player goes airborne. So if that player goes airborne, now this is really close on whether the contact takes place before they go airborne. But if they went airborne, and let's just say there's no contact until the player is clearly in the air, the defender has to be in legal guarding position. They cannot move over. They cannot take away their, what I call their airspace. And that's just a way to know that they can't go into their path, if you will, as they're in the air. They have to be in legal guarding position. They do not have to be set, but they cannot take something away from them, from where they're going. So if they're in a path going airborne, I can't slide over to make contact because I was in legal guarding position before. That's the one caveat that changes in this play if you deem this is an airborne player. Now, the reason I mention that is because this play probably takes place, or the contact takes place before actually the player goes airborne. And if you kind of see, maybe it's real quick, but so you don't get fooled by that aspect of it. It looks like there's contact before the player goes airborne. But if the player had gone airborne and there wasn't contact, then the defender has to be in legal guarding position at that time. Now, I also want to make this clear. This is kind of for when the faking being fouled. This is contact. So we got to be real careful with faking being fouled if there's contact. When there's contact, then we got to decide the legality of either the offensive player or the defensive player. And the player got bumped far enough because of the contact. It doesn't take much. Seemed to get bumped backward. But it's something to think about because they can still embellish the contact, but I don't believe that there's any part of this that is an embellishment. This is just two players coming at each other and there's a little bit of contact and neither fall, which a lot of times that's not the case. Sometimes there's somebody who falls in this case. So this is a blocking foul because the defender is coming forward, whether they were airborne or not. But you need to consider that in this particular case. Any questions or anything that I might have said that might have been a little confusing before I move on to the play summary?
Hey guys, make sure you write down what he's talking about is LGP, that is legal guarding position. Write that down. That's part of your referee verbiage that you'll be using, that you'll hear us talk about sometime when we're talking and giving out great information. So we use a lot of referee verbiage. LGP, legal guarding position.
Thank you, Tracy. Okay, so let's kind of get into the summary of this. This is a challenging play. Defender appears to have tamed legal guarding position by being in the path with 2 feet facing the opponent. And then the issue is that did they maintain it, which it appears they have moved forward slightly after the shooter became airborne. I can make a case it was before the shooter went airborne. But this is just kind of what this is to do. Now, the other thing, did anybody notice anything else that could have been an issue with this? Just and I'm going to get right to it to explain. So what we have to do always is when we have to stop the clock, which the official did in this case. Stop the clock, and then they count the basket. Now, the other thing that is the aspect is that they want us to have what we call a preliminary signal. And so he doesn't give a preliminary signal. So he doesn't tell everybody clearly that I have a block, or that's the reason that the foul was. Or he could have had some other kind of foul. Could have had a push or a slap in the arm. Whatever the foul is, we're supposed to give in high school basketball the preliminary signal. But when he does this first, he can't count the basket. And obviously, if you're counting the basket, you're calling a defensive foul in this particular case. Or if you're waving off the basket, you're not calling a defensive foul. You're calling likely an offensive or team control foul. So that is part of the procedure, but then he's supposed to give a signal at the spot. Okay. And now let me make this clear. So when you also, once this foul is called, we got to report this. And if you notice, he goes and reports this foul. I'm sorry, I got to go back a couple times because I want to make sure we see everything. So he calls a foul. And I don't think, maybe it's not on this one. Maybe we don't see him report. No, we don't see him report. So after this foul, he's got to go to the table and he's got to go around the players. Do not go through the players. And even if you got to take the long way, he can kind of go on the end line, but we want to get him to the reporting area, which is kind of between the 3-point lines. Maybe it's a volleyball line, so usually a little further out, not close to the table. You report that foul and give the same signal. Now, the first thing you do when you report a foul, if the basket is of issue, you either count it or you wave it off, depending on what the circumstances of the play is. And there are plays you will have to wave off the basket because there might be a putback, or maybe the foul takes place and they take several steps, throw the ball up. They were not in the shooting motion at that time, or the basket, we don't want to count it. Something really where it's clearly we're not counting basket. That's the very first thing you do when you get to the table. Count the basket. White, 1, 3, or black in this case, I'm not sure the number, 21, black, block. Now, and I'll get into maybe even some signaling a little later because there's a play later that kind of covers that. But we got to give that information and then say what we're doing. Shooting 1, 2, obviously the basket counts, so we're shooting 1. If it's a 3-point basket, count the basket, 3 points, 21 block or whatever the case may be, and say how many free throws. So all that is what you go through in that process. Moving on a little bit because we're going to kind of cover some cross stuff that's taking place. So lead official rules a blocking foul, counts the basket on this play. This is play number 2. Do you agree with the ruling? Same examples of questions. Now, this is clearly an airborne shooter play. So we have to rule on this. Okay. Based on what we just said on the other one, does anybody not have this as a blocking foul?
Mm-mm.
So this should be probably an agreement based off of the first play. This is absolutely a blocking foul. And this is a blocking foul more for what I was talking about in the first situation because we have an airborne shooter. And once that player has gone airborne, the defender has to be in a different place. Okay? So they may have had legal guard position right now, which they do. But the question is, do they maintain it properly? And then once that player goes airborne, did they maintain it?
Swing the fucking bat.
So he does not maintain legal guarding position. He clearly goes up in the air and kind of takes what I call his airspace. That's not a rule book term, but that's kind of a way that helps me describe kind of what he's doing. He was going to probably fly right by him if he's in the air, and he can't come over while he's in the air and take him out of it. And obviously, there's contact. Clearly,
He
displaced
got under him.
defender.
He still moving.
Well, It's not about moving. It's about where does he go to? If he's in the air, he's got to be there. If he stayed there, if he stayed in place and he got hit directly in the chest and got run over with minimal movement, didn't lean, didn't do anything like that, that's a different situation. But this case, he takes him out in the air, clearly in the air, and just keeps coming. He's coming forward on an airborne shooter. So there's a couple reasons why this is illegal. He takes coming forward, probably moves to the side a little bit as well. This is unlike if he's on the floor. If the shooter never gets in the air, then the way we rule that contact is totally different. So this is clearly a blocking foul. Now, the part that they discuss, and I want to kind of talk about this too, but let's kind of go through the summary. Defender gets 2 feet on the floor, facing an opponent, but defender appears to be moving into the path after the shooter goes airborne. So in this case, the defender is responsible for the contact and charged with a blocking foul. And it seems like we're mostly in agreement, partially what I maybe helped you with. Now, this is the part that I kind of want to discuss because this comes up a lot in basketball officiating circles. So, does anybody, you probably watch a lot of basketball, you see a lot of official signals, and technically this is an incorrect signal because the signal had his hands with the fist on the, he doesn't put his hands on the side. Now, the reason I want to also talk about this is because this is something that probably 90% of the officials do. And I would say this, that basically you want to check your local listings about how much of a thing this is where you are. And I know that we're trying to make everybody do everything the same way, but you might see officials do this. And it's not considered that big of a deal to some, but it's considered a real big deal to others. Kind of wish Gary was here to kind of to clear that up, maybe from a state standpoint. But I can tell you that this is not something that is majorly emphasized at the state level, but it's one of these things that's kind of like some people frown upon it and others don't care as much. So I would say this, veterans probably you will see doing this. It's not the first thing that we mention. If we mention this to you in a video or in an evaluation, we probably don't have much to mention because usually this is not the first thing that everybody would be going through. So kind of based on what I was talking about with the foul reporting, we count the basket, wave off the basket if the basket goes in. So we have to tell everybody that's the first thing. We tell what the number is. In this case, white 24. Get your numbers up, and Clarence and Tracy talked about how to do that. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, however they do it, or whatever that gets you to slow down, because one of the biggest mistakes we have officials do is they get to the table and they go 23, block, out of bounds. And and your scorer has no clue what you just said. You have to remember you are doing this for the audience of the scorer and everybody else so that it adds credibility to what you're doing. So you have to give this information slowly, accurately, and with confidence, because this is what everybody is looking at. Even coaches will sometimes judge what they think of your call based off of how you signal at the table. So especially in a tough call, in a tough situation. So this is the correct procedure kind of in this thing. We can talk about this over time. Any questions about that?
Jeff, I kind of lost what you were saying that some officials do and some don't do, especially at the state level.
No, what I'm saying is that to some, this is an ire of some officials and evaluators that make a big deal about how you give a block signal or don't give a block signal, and others, it's not as important. And I'm saying this because you might do this and someone won't say anything to you. And then you might go someplace else and someone will say something to you. So I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong way to look at it. Maybe you want to, as a younger official, use the proper signals as much as you can. But I'm going to just be honest that there's some debate sometimes about whether we give a block signal with our fists or whether we don't. And that's all I'm saying. Most of the time at the spot, the initial foul call, most officials are going to use their fist. They just are.
Well, when I did the
And
state finals,
I'm
when I did the state finals, we had I can't remember the lady's name, but she wound up going to work for the National Federation, and she was a college official, and she was a stickler for that because we had a couple of people that were using their fists, and she downgraded their assignment because of that as we moved on through the weekend. Okay. And you're right. You got some folks that care about whether you use your fist or use your hand. We got a lot of brand new officials here. The proper way is to use your hand. So be careful when you use your fist because you're gonna have an audience. You got video, a lot more video now than we ever had when I first started back in the 80s. And people didn't see what you were doing, so you get away with a lot. The folks that are down at the IHSA has the ability to see most games now. We have in our gyms now what's called the huddle, and all they can do is get access to that video via huddle, and they see everything, and they go about evaluating you from where you are. So just remember, know your audience. Comedians say you can't tell a joke in front of certain people unless they get the joke. So know your audience.
And my ultimate point here, guys, is just to get you to understand that this is one of these things that you will see debated amongst even the top brass of officials. So I'm just saying that to you to suggest that if you do what that official did, there are people that will make a big deal out of it. And then there are others who won't. So don't be surprised if somebody doesn't say anything, but then don't be surprised if somebody does. And that's the reason why we're kind of talking about this. So moving on. Okay. To play 3. Same question, but same multiple choice answers. But as a player dribbles toward the basket, the defender falls to the floor. What is the correct ruling? Okay. And here's the video. Okay. Now that we've seen it, how many people got this as a blocking foul? Now, this is going to be more of a complicated play. So how many people have this as a player control foul? How many people have this as a faking being fouled infraction? And does anybody have this as a simply incidental contact? And nothing else, meaning we're not calling anything related to the first 3. Okay. This is a faking being fouled infraction. Now, we're going to go back and look at this because I want to show this to you because I'm going to talk about this play a little bit. So why is this a faking being fouled infraction? Okay, we clearly have the size sometimes matter, but it doesn't always matter. Probably maybe a little bigger player than the defender. The defender is obviously a little smaller. It wouldn't take much probably to run her over or to create some contact. But in this case, if you watch the defender and you watch how she reacts to the play, she just seems to kind of bounce off the girl. The girl never, the ball handler never even moves in her direction. She's actually moving sideways, kind of in a way, to, kind of not to go through her. And then she falls. And then if you look how she falls, she kind of throws herself down and takes herself out of the play. Now, I'm not 110% sure if this video took place last season or the year before, so they don't call anything. But by rule, this is very likely, or in my opinion, clearly a faking being fouled infraction. And a faking being fouled infraction means that once this play is over, because it's the defender, we're going to wait to let that play finish out. And then we're going to stop play and rule the warning. If it's the first warning, if it is the second infraction of this type, it is a technical foul. And I want to ask, does anybody know what kind of technical foul that this would be?
Team technical foul.
Team technical foul. This is not goes to the player. It does not go towards the coach or anybody else. It's a team technical. So that means that this particular player could do this 5 or 6 times theoretically. And let's hope we don't have that many. But if, let's say, this player did it 5 times, they do not get a personal foul 1 time. It is a team technical. It goes towards the foul total. And because it's a technical, anybody can shoot that's eligible on the other team, even players that are on the bench, as long as they have not been disqualified from the contest or not in uniform or something of that nature. Anybody's eligible. And then because it's a technical foul, which is a high school, we give the ball opposite table to the team that is offended. So in this case, it would be the team in white. Now, does anybody have any questions why this is not maybe a blocking or a player control foul?
No questions pertaining to that, but for the first infraction for a flop, would that be a warning?
Yes, it is just a warning. And I want to make this also clear. There are warnings in the book. There's 5 warnings. I believe this is the 6th warning. The 5 warnings, if they're the other warnings, meaning everything from reaching across the throwing plane to not having the floor ready to interfering with the ball after a made basket to I'm trying to think what else right off the top of my head, but any of those warnings, those are the first warnings of those are considered a warning. And then if another warning takes place, it's a technical foul, regardless of what kind of warning. This is a warning, but it's not commingled with that. The faking being fouled warning is unto itself by rule. So you can't have, let's say, reaching over the plane, you call a warning, and then you have the first faking being fouled against that same team, and then we call a technical foul. This warning is unto itself, so it has to be this. And if it's a warning, if this happens on the first infraction, we call a warning. We first off let this play out, let her finish the play. She makes it, then we stop play. If they miss it, and this is kind of where I would help because they kind of the National Federation did change the interpretation a little bit on this, and I don't want to know if Illinois is going to do the same thing because that has not been made clear. But if she misses it and there's a rebound, we are supposed to allow the play to continue, and especially if the team is in white has the ball, we let it continue until the next dead ball or until red gets the ball by possession. So that's how that works. And if the defense gets it on the rebound, if it's missed, then we can stop play and then we can say, okay, we're going to give the warning. And then we give the ball back to point of interruption. And the reason I'm saying this is because also we are to give the signal for the warning. Okay? And to let everybody know that's what we're doing until we stop play. So again, this is what this this real quick before we get into this, because I want to kind of cover this. This is a fool the official play. That's the whole point of this, is to fool you into thinking they were fouled so we can call a violation, or we can call a foul either on them, well, usually against their opponent. And again, if it's the first infraction, it's a warning. The second one is a team technical foul. Okay. And they say to give the signal. I believe they've kind of said to give it once. I'm going to kind of tell you that you do kind of have to let people know that you're doing this. I think a couple times, at least that was the stance for the IHSA last year, to give it at least a couple times. You don't have to give it multiple times, like like we're waving off or trying to put out a fire. But I do think giving it a good strong one or twice is okay. But I would like Gary to kind of talk about that, because the National Federation did kind of change their stance on that. Any questions, or was that you, Steve, about to say something?
No, that's me,
No,
Jeff.
sir. No, sir. That was not me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who was about to say something? Because I want to answer the question before we move on to the next one.
That's me, Sharif.
Yeah.
I was just going to point out, because a lot of times there are officials who want to call that a block because they don't like calling the fake being fouled,
Mhm.
but that punishes the offense, especially in a play like that, because she was not actually in the shooting motion. And so now, if you call a block and they're not shooting, you got a ball out of bounds. And so there's no real penalty for the block except the foul on the player. And so you're going to get players that will fake being fouled again instead of the punishment that comes with fake being fouled.
Well, honestly, if you really think about it, the foul's more punitive.
It wasn't shooting in that case. She pivoted
Right,
and came back
but
the
you
other way.
don't have to have a faking being fouled because they're shooting. You can call a block if you think it's a block, but it's not it doesn't have to be a shooting foul. It's still more punitive, at least, than a warning.
Well, and
That
that
being said, but that being said, I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying don't commingle it because it's a shooting. It doesn't have to be a shooting foul. You could call a block if you believe it's a block. Now, the reason I'm also saying that is because what if she turns and that action trips the player? You have some decision to make there.
Well, I was saying specifically in this case because she pivoted after the fake being fouled and hit the basket, and so now she's.
I agree. I agree.
That's all
I'm just making the point that
yeah, you're right.
a blocking foul doesn't necessarily mean you're doing it for shooting purposes if you deem it's a blocking foul. Now, there's some judgment here, and that's the thing, is I think this is more clearly a flop that we have not typically called. But there are going to be plays that are going to be a lot tougher than that one.
Yeah.
Where you really got to decide, did they really fake being fouled, or did they get run over, or did they get a block? This is just not one of those situations. This is more an obvious faking being fouled. But there are plays that are going to go hard to the basket. There's going to be barely any contact, maybe not even enough contact, and you got to decide, even on an airborne shooter, did that contact take place, affect the defender, the shooter? Did they go through them? Now, here's another thing to think about. This is what we talk about at other levels. If you see a to and through, meaning I'm going towards you and I go through you, then we probably got to call a foul in that situation. Because then they got to decide if the defender was legal, did they maintain their legality, and did they get run over? We don't want flops on those plays if there's considerable amount of to and through. And then also you got to consider things like, is the contact that took place, is it a 2 or is it a 9? It looks like her contact, or the way the defender acted, she acted like she got ran over by a 9. And if there was any contact, it might have been 1 or 2 at best. So that's another way to kind of judge whether you think that this is a faking being fouled infraction. We do not call enough of these, and I'm just going to say that. We don't call enough of them. Again, this is a college rule that came from the college ranks, which we had, fortunately, probably for I think 2017 was the first year that they put that rule in. They went to a warning, then technical infraction process, and then about 2 or 3 years ago, they got rid of the technical, the warning aspect and went to a technical foul. But I've seen so much film on these, and we have so much film that we could show to kind of help you make these plays. We will do that in the future as well. But these are not easy plays for especially newer and officials who've been working high school a long time, because when we were in college, when we did the college rules, we called them all the time. And then we had to kind of scale it back, because then also here's the other thing, the more we called it, and players stopped doing it. And that's really why we want you to call more of these infractions, so that we can keep you. So eventually 2 or 3 years from now, we're not calling many at all. And it's probably more obvious when we're calling them. So,
Hey Jeff, can I say something?
yes.
Hey, I just want to say, I hear what Sharif is saying, but I don't want the newer people to put that in their minds, because that's a bad mindset to have, because of the fact that if you put a foul on that player, if it's a block, more than likely either that player gonna stop doing it, or they're gonna sit down because they don't want to foul out, or the coach don't want them to foul out. So for you to try to save fouls because you think that the flop warning is better, that's just not a good philosophy to have in your mind. So each individual play, you have to referee it like it's an individual play. Don't think about, oh, it's a made basket or she can make a basket. None of that should be into play. It's either did she flop or did she foul her? That's it. When you start trying to put your own philosophy in there, you're trying to manipulate the game. That's just not how you officiate. That's not a good philosophy, not a good mindset when you think about trying to adjudicate these plays. Referee them individual and go from that. You know, you can't, the rule book doesn't have what if Sharif or what if somebody thinks this. The rule book says either it's a flop or it's a foul. So
Exactly.
we can't referee based on what your philosophy is, what you think, because that's not how the game is supposed to be officiated. I just had to add that. That's it.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm just saying when it's a flop, it's a flop. And sometimes guys are called block on a flop because they don't want to administer the flop. That's all I was saying.
And all of that is valid point. And by the way, that's you, Tyreek, correct?
Yeah, just little old me, sir.
Well, just so you know, I want to introduce Tyreek. Tyreek is a Division I official who works in the Big Ten and the Big Ten Consortium. So when he's talking, he's coming from that perspective as well.
So
I'm
this
just,
ain't no
I want,
college conference. Don't be introducing
this
him.
has nothing to do
I
with it. He
don't
worked
like
high
him.
school. Wait.
I'm kidding. I'm having fun.
And
just having fun.
he is
I'm just having fun.
two-time
That's my fun.
state. He's
That's
a
my
two-time. Steve, be quiet for a second.
Okay.
He's a two-time state foul official. He actually worked 2 4A championships before I worked my 4A championship.
So
back in 20. I'm just telling them. So
you said a second. I gave you the second, god dog it.
But I just wanted to qualify who was speaking, because we talk about all the other individuals who are in position. So Tyreek is coming from a place of experience when it comes to that as well. That's all. That's all I was saying. That's
One of the best in the business. That's my man.
One of the best in the business. So from Chicago area. So okay, let's move it on to play 4. We're gonna kind of go through a little of these quicker, but
just to recap on that last play, if you don't mind. If the flopping occurs, you wait for the play. If the defense would have gotten that, if she would have missed and the defense would have gotten that ball, then at that time you stop, you call the warning, and you you say the ball goes out of bounds, baseline for white, right?
Yes, but you give it to the defense if the defense has it.
Oh, you do give it to the defense, so it doesn't change possession. It doesn't change possession since you called the warning.
Doesn't change possession. We're just stop and play when. And again, I would love if Gary was here, and maybe we'll have Gary explain what the philosophy is with the state of Illinois, because we'd had a little bit of a different philosophy than the interpretation they put out, and I'm sure that will also come out in information. But as of right now, as far as I know, based off of what we did last year, if the defense got that ball in the rebound, we kill the play immediately. If the offense gets the rebound, we are to let them continue to make scoring attempts. And then if they make the basket or change of possession happens, we stop play and then we administer the warning. Obviously, if we have a technical foul, it doesn't matter who has possession, but I would still wait until the offense has completed their possession and before calling a technical foul. Give them the opportunity to score and benefit from whatever took place. Because then also it could be a more of, that's when it could be punitive. Because what if they make the basket? What if there's a foul that's related? All those things can take place, and let them get all of that. And that's kind of what we do at the college level, but college does it a little differently. And I'm just saying that so that you guys are aware the college technicals or point of interruption are very different. So there, what you might see them do is different than what we do at the high school level. But
So
I would
Jeff-
love for Gary, and we will have Gary talk about that as these meetings move on.
So Jeff, this Paul Schaefer. So would you give the delayed violation signal first, followed by a flop signal, and let while the play is continuing?
The flop signal is the only thing you give if you are not stopping play. So if you're not stopping play,
you don't give a delayed.
No, you don't give a delay. The delay signals is a different signal for different stuff. Excuse me, sorry.
So
give the
explain to me
flop signal.
So what's the example of a delayed signal?
Well, Paul, the flop signal is considered a delayed signal with the flop situation.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just simply your hands going from top to bottom, if you can see that, and you give it at least once. I think you should give it twice, because if you're continuing play, you want everybody to see I'm ruling a flop. Okay, then once the play stops, or whenever based off the situation I said, blow your whistle, stop play. Give flop, go to the table, report this. I have a flop on 23 white. Okay, just like anything else, flop 23 white, ball out of bounds to whoever that goes to. If we're calling a technical foul, the only difference is that we're stopping the clock, probably I guess with the fifth, we're giving a technical foul, but we have to give the flop signal to say that's what we're doing it for, and then go to the table, report that. Obviously, we got to report the technical foul. Technical foul, white 23, flopping or faking being fouled, and then we administer it. So we got to give that signal. There's a delayed signal. That's what I thought you were going with it, Paul, that we put our arm out. That's not the signal that we give.
So what's an example of the use of the delayed signal?
If they run out of bounds, or if we have a free throw infraction of some kind, that we delay that signal, that's a completely different signal.
Okay.
We don't give that. The flopping has its own warning and own infraction, so we have to give that as the proper signal.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Okay, we'll move on a little bit. The ball handler has ended a dribble and stepping towards the basket. When contact ensues with a defender, the lead official rules a player control foul. Do we agree with the ruling? It goes through the examples. Let me show the play, and we'll go from there.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes.
We got somebody that's asked this question in the chat. The question is the technical foul administered on the second flop?
Yes.
Okay.
At any time during the game. So the first one could happen in the first quarter. The second would happen late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, there you
go. Okay. All right. This is a player control foul. Does anybody not have this as a player control foul? And let's discuss it. Because I want you to understand why we're calling what we're calling. First off, this player does have legal guarding position. He's established it, 2 feet on the floor, facing several steps before he gets to him. He's already established it. And then he gets hit. Now, is the contact a lot? No, it is not. But this probably shouldn't be anything but a player control foul. Now, does anybody have something different and want to explain maybe why? Because I think this is a little more grayer than other plays that I show. Nobody disagrees that this is a player control foul. Okay, that's good. Okay. Says the defender attained initial leading guard of possession by being in the path of the opponent with 2 feet on the floor. And then the defender fails to get his head and shoulder past the defender. When the contact occurs, the defender displaced the defender. Therefore, it is player control foul. Okay. And it should be noted the defender and opponent with the ball. Time and distance is not a factor in the ruling on the contact, and if the legal guard position is obtained, the ball handler is responsible for the contact. Now, I also
excuse me, sir. I got 2 more questions.
Go ahead.
Question number 1: do each team get their own warning before the technical foul? The answer to that question is yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Each team get their own warning before the technical foul. And then the next question is, if the team fouls at 5 and there's a flop technical, is it 4 shots at the line?
Great question. No.
Yes.
Technical fouls come with their own penalty. And always think of it that way. It comes with their own penalty. Regardless of whether it puts us in the bonus or not, there is not an extra penalty because we're in the bonus. So that's just an unfortunate part of maybe they should be penalized more. I guess someone would argue, but no. If I call a technical foul, I do never commingle that technical foul of any kind with the bonus or any other infraction. It has its own penalty. Now, if we had a foul, and then maybe, which we could have, this could happen. We could have a flop that we let play out. Then we have a foul later because we didn't stop play appropriately. Then we would have to apply both penalties because we can't ignore that we called a foul. Because maybe the reason we stopped play is because of a foul, not because of the flop. Does that make sense? So we have a flop first, right? We have a flop first. We let play continue. And then let's say that player passes the ball to somebody else, and then they go hard at the basket, and we have a blocking foul. If that's the second flop of the game, it's a technical foul, but we can't ignore and act like that foul that happened that stopped play didn't happen.
And Jeff,
we have to still adjudicate that.
Jeff, in
What's
that scenario, you would administer the technical first, followed by the shooting foul?
No, we do everything in the order, and I would say, even though you're actually calling it technical, no, we would administer the bonus first, and because the technical foul is where they're going to get the ball afterwards, we would do the technical last.
So you always do the technical last?
Not always. It's just in this particular situation where play continues with the flop warning. That was what they determined to do last year, or what they did when they put this new infraction in. Every other technical foul has to be done in the order in which it all takes place. So if, let's say, we have a unsporting technical, let's say we have a player control foul, block charge, whatever, and because of something later, there's an unsporting act, and we call a technical foul, we would shoot whatever the first part, if there were free throws associated with it, and then go to the technical foul. So that's typically how we would do that. But in this particular case, because this was again, they just put this in last year, the general rule is we go in the order in which it took place, but actually we're not calling the technical foul till the end, so we are going to shoot the technical free throws last. And I know in some ways that doesn't make sense to other rules, but it does in this case because that's how they wanted it handled. And all that really means in English is who shoots, because the foul that we call that's not related to the flop, we would call, we have to shoot that, and we have to shoot that with the person who was fouled, or if they're injured or there's blood or something, whoever comes out the game, it comes in the game to shoot for them. But then the technical, anybody can shoot. So it could be potentially, I guess, since you got to shoot two technicals, and see, this is another thing I want to understand. Let me ask this question real quick, and anybody answer this. If I have a technical foul shots, can only one player shoot them or two players shoot them? Or multiple for whatever technicals we have?
Multiple.
What's that?
Multiple.
Can be multiple. So if they don't like, the coach doesn't like this first shooter and says, oh, you missed it, that's terrible, I want him to shoot, they can do that. So theoretically, for each shot, it could be a different player. Now, does that typically happen? No. But do know by rule they can do that at the high school level. At other codes, they may not be able to do that. So just keep that in mind. But don't be surprised if some coach does that. I've had it happen, but it doesn't happen very often.
I've had it happen too, where
Yeah.
we call multiple technical fouls and the crazy coach sent 4 different kids out there to shoot free throws.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's up to the coach to decide that. So be aware of that, and it has other implications. So don't not allow that to happen if a coach wants to do it, especially if there's multiple free throws. And sometimes if the player that fouled is the best shooter, they may shoot all of them. So let that, just be aware of that. Okay. Any questions about that play that we just talked about? Okay. Now, this is also talking about the signals. The official correctly displayed the stop foul signal, if you notice. But if you notice, they never really gave the signal. They just pointed. So what we're supposed to do is stop the clock, put our hand behind our head, and then signal the direction. And that's what is the proper way. You do see officials who will do both. And again, this just depends on who you're with. Some people like that, some people don't. But properly, it's supposed to be 2 distinct steps in that process. But that's the case. So there you go. Any questions about that play?
I got a comment, and not just about this play, but about what's happening here. I'm probably the only guy that ref Tyreek on this call. And back when he played ball, we didn't have all these videos, guys. We didn't have anybody sitting down going through videos. We did it kind of word of mouth. And Tyreek was a flopper back in his day when he played at Kenwood. Yeah, no, trust me, I was there. Anyway, take advantage of this. This IHSA is really nice, and what you guys are doing is really nice. I have to commend you on this. This is pretty good.
Okay. Play 5. I think this is the last play of the blocking. I'm going to go to the other section. Okay. Lead rules of blocking foul, awards 2 free throws on the play. Do we agree with the ruling? Kind of the same things that they were given before. So we have a play. This is an airborne shooter play. So we kind of talked about this, and this is where the rule changes a little bit when they go airborne. They have to be in legal guarding position. So who has this as a blocking foul? And you can put it in the chat. Who has this as a player control foul? Does anybody have this as a faking being fouled? And does anybody have this as incidental contact? So somebody tell me why they got a blocking foul. Or does anybody have it as a blocking foul?
They're moving and
Hey Jeff,
slightly to the side as well.
Okay, so who first said moving?
Me, Todd.
Okay. Is moving a part of our rule?
No, but as the player went airborne, he was still slightly moving to the left.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm saying moving, because moving is not a part of our rule. Be very, very, very careful saying moving, because that implies something else. Because if and the reason I'm saying this, because if you're jumping at me and you're coming directly at me and I'm backing up, can I move while you're in the air?
Yes.
Yes, I can. So moving is not the issue. Now, what you did say, what other thing did you say that might be a factor in that?
That after he went airborne, he was shifting to the left.
Okay.
Slightly.
That would be considered illegal if you feel that that was enough to cause contact. So that's a good point if you make it. Does anybody agree with that, or does anybody think it's a player control foul?
hey Jeff, Ronnie Brown, I thought it was a blocking foul as well for the same reasons.
Okay. Anybody disagree with those two?
I thought it was player control. I didn't see the shift to the side that they're talking about.
Okay. Anybody agree that it's a player control foul?
I agree that it's a player control foul, but can you just go over like the obliquely part? Because I thought I think somebody was saying he's moving to the left, but like
Well, this is an airborne shooter. So airborne shooter has a different classification. They got to be in legal guarded position when they go airborne. So let's not talk about the obliquely part. I just want to discuss, like, does anybody think that this is something else?
His feet were
And there's a
set
reason why
before he
we're
went.
doing this.
His feet were set before he went up airborne, though.
Okay. Now, anybody have this as a faking being fouled infraction? And there's a reason I'm asking this, guys. This is I want us to, because this is how your mind has to process. Would this at all to anybody be a faking being fouled? And there's no right or wrong answer. That's why I'm asking. Okay, doesn't seem like anybody thinks it. That's pretty good. Does anybody think that this is just simply incidental contact? You're gonna play on. Okay. That's good. It doesn't appear anybody thinks that this is a play on that I can tell. The reason I'm saying this because you make the ruling. I think that we could justify almost any of these to some extent. And the reason I'm saying it, and there's no real answer for this, because if you look at this play, he does slightly move over in the air, slightly. But is that enough to consider that a blocking foul? I will say for me, no, that's not enough. I don't think he moves enough over. If he maybe moved his foot over or clearly leaned over to the left and contact took place, I think that would be a better case. So he does slightly move over, and you got to decide if that's enough for you to call a blocking foul. I think at best, this is more than likely, personally, a player control foul because the contact is in the torso, which it doesn't say, it doesn't have to be square, it hits him in the torso. So for typical, just from a consistency process, or my thinking, you hit him in the torso, especially if he's there before he's airborne, this is probably a player control foul, more than likely. But I also think you could justify this being incidental because of the amount of contact or the lack of contact that takes place. Not saying that would be probably the best call, Maybe if we had other plays like this in the game and we had to make a decision based on maybe similar plays, I could see you going with an incidental contact on this. I don't think that this is faking being fouled. That there's too much contact. I think we either got to decide that this is a foul or decide that it's incidental, meaning the contact didn't affect the player. And I think that's the point of them showing this, because there's elements of this that they say you basically make the rule. So again, the defender has
Come here, sit down, Simmer. Come here.
the defender has 2 feet on the floor. But however, after the shooter becomes airborne, the defender does move his shoulders in the path, attempt to draw a foul, or does he move there in an attempt to brace for the contact? Because the other part of that is they can brace for the contact. They can move a little bit to like, I'm gonna get hit. I don't want to get hit. So we got to give them some ability to basically be able to brace for it. So that's where you got to make the decision. And the other thing that we talked about, stop the clock. He did that properly. He does not use the proper signal according to the book and
Sit down,
our
sit down,
and our
sit
normal
down.
mechanics. And an additional note, official signal to the score table, walking towards the table. The other thing that we didn't talk about, you need to get to the reporting area. You need to come to a complete stop, face the table. The other thing I would also say to you, you want to make eye contact with the person that is the scorer. And the reason you want to make eye contact, because if they're writing in that book before you get there, they could be wrong about the number or the player. Now, this play is a little easier because it's really 2 players making contact. But what if there was 2 or 3 other players involved in this play where there's contact? There could be a situation you could have one or the other that you're not calling the block on that one. Maybe you're calling a push on the other one. And if they're not looking at you and making eye contact with you before you report that, there are times when they will write the wrong thing in the book. And I will say one of the things I will do is if I'd have a scorer who's consistently doing that, even if it's really early in the game, I'll stop.
Sit down, sit down.
I'll stop. And I won't do anything. And I'll look at them and I'll say, hey, you need to look at me. Because all it takes, guys, is one time for them to put the wrong number in that book. And now we got a situation maybe 10 or 15 minutes later near the end of the game where we're fouling out the wrong player. And you might think that does not happen. I've actually had that happen to me in a game. And it was because I did not use due diligence to make sure the score put the score, the right fouler in the book. That is a very important part of what we do. Always make eye contact with them. This also should be something you say in your pregame as a referee. Make sure you're making eye contact. Don't assume, because sometimes there's 2 or 3 players involved, and we have plays, and you're calling a foul on one kid because you know he got him first, or I know the majority of that contact came from him or her, so I'm getting them, not the one that they ran over. So they may not know who you're calling it on. So just be careful with that.
Jeffrey,
Also,
I'd like to add something to that, if I
what's
can.
that?
This is Bryce.
Go ahead.
You said about fouling the wrong person out. Well, I've also seen the situation in Special Olympics regionals where one of my kids that I was coaching should have been fouled out, but they wrote it in the book wrong, so the kid got to stay in, and everybody's freaking out because he should have been fouled out. So we need, as officials, need to make sure that information is correct.
Right. And the thing is, once you report it, you're not going to know it's correct. But one thing you can do is you can make sure that they're paying attention. And I'll tell this quick story because this actually happened to me. I don't have any problem telling this story. This was a long time ago, really early in my career. I was at Lewiston High School in Central Illinois, and they were playing Bushnell High School, and this was before the rule was about white versus the dark color. I think one team had red, and they both have red in their school colors. One had light blue, or kind of like a baby blue. And so we literally had 2 45s were the bigs in this game. And it was a sophomore game. And it was the 2 45s were the bigs, and they were playing each other. And they basically were fouling each other left and right. fouling each other left or right. They basically used up all the fouls. So the score that was from Lewiston puts it a couple times. It's like, I got it, you know, and that might have been my first or second year that I was officiating. And in that, he just kind of like, yeah, I got it. And he kind of did that. And I reported a 45 because it was these two players were basically, they used up pretty much all their fouls. Well, we got late in the game and I called 45 and I can't remember who it was on. I think it might have been on Bushnell player, and which they were visiting, and they put him in the book, and he put it in the book and told me that's his 5th foul. Immediately, the coaches started going crazy from Bushnell. It was like, wait a minute, he only had so-and-so fouls or whatever. That's not, he didn't foul out and this, that, other. And it took us a few minutes to try to figure out whether what foul did he have and this, that, other. But the official book had that number. And I wasn't 110% sure because the fouls, we were calling them throughout the game. So it wasn't like there was one distinct foul that we could make, like which one did he report. But the lesson I learned from that was to always make sure that they're looking at me. And and I don't care how embarrassing it is to them, because if you embarrass them a little bit, meaning the scorer, they'll usually stop doing this. And I've even sat there when they're not looking at me, but all the other tables looking at me, and then I'll just sit there, and then they'll be like, and then someone will go, hey, look at him. And then I go, 25, block, foul, out of bounds. And then I'll say immediately, you need to look at me. Because if you put the wrong number in the book, we have a problem. They're going to get on all of us because of it. So that's just a little thing, and we couldn't solve the problem because by rule, can we change a foul if we don't have definite knowledge? We can't. Now, if we have definite knowledge, of course we can change something. But because of this case, it was 2 of the same number and just different colors, and we couldn't determine. We were calling fouls all day on these 2 players against each other, on other players. I mean, I think both of them ended up fouling out, but we probably fouled out the one player before the other one, before we should have. And it just takes that small minute for that to take place, and then you have a problem. So make sure that we have this at every time. Okay. Okay, this kind of goes through that a little bit. Our procedures: stop the clock when we call a foul with our fist up in the air. Make eye contact with our partners. This is always important, especially when you have a crew of 2 and a crew of 3. It doesn't matter because your partner might have something. So make sure that you make eye contact, make sure they don't have something else. If the basket is an issue, we're going to wave it off or we're going to count it. We're going to do one or the other at the spot to tell everybody that's what we're doing based off the situation. We're going to continue to hold our arm in the fist, especially if we don't have number 3. We're going to say, hey, who the foul is on, and maybe even some other information, maybe who our shooter is, especially if we know we're in the bonus. We're going to state the foul that we have: hold, block, push, whatever the case may be. Give the direction, especially if it's a player control foul or team control foul, and indicate the throwing spot if we need to, if throws are, or say how many free throws that we're to shoot. We have to go through that process at the spot, and then we tell the story at the spot. Then we go and tell the story at the table. We do the same basic thing. So when we go to the table, if you called a hold, don't go to the table and now call a push. I see a lot of officials do that. So if you called something at the spot, stick with that. Don't change it, because then that also can change the credibility of people observing you, thinking maybe you're not as confident in your call. Okay. Violation, same thing. Stop the clock, blow a whistle, make eye contact, because our partner could have something different. And here's the thing: if we have something different, or a parent, or like one partner has a foul, the other one has a violation, come together and decide which one came first, or what maybe the foul caused the whatever. I mean, I even say this in the pregame. If I'm working with Tyreek and I have a play that starts in my area, goes to Tyreek. Maybe Tyreek has a run over, and he's going to call a block or a charge. But maybe I got a foul that preceded that, or a violation that preceded that. I might come into him and say, Tyreek, I see your foul. I have a travel first. That's something you might want to talk about, how you want to solve that.
Hey.
Or maybe decide who's in their primary. However you do, you probably need to talk about that. Same with the held ball. Now the held ball comes with the stop clock signal, then the held ball signal, and then we want to make sure we don't take our eyes off the players in those particular situations. I don't want to get into all of that. So, any questions about that? Any questions about that, real quick? And who's ever that was, put yourself on mute. You don't know who it was. Let's go through one more real quick, and I'm gonna go through this a lot faster. This is just to show. Hold on, I'm not sharing yet. Hold on. Let me share this one. Okay, I'm gonna go through pivot foot real quick. Can everybody see the screen? Play 6 through 10. Somebody give me a heads up.
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm gonna go through these a little quicker because this involves a pivot foot. Just to kind of give you an idea of what we're kind of doing. Play 6. Okay. Low post player executes a spin move. Pass defender attempts to try. Was this a legal play? Says yes, it's a legal play, or no, it's a traveling violation. Okay. Anybody not have this as a traveling violation?
That's 100% of travel.
What's that?
This is Dan. That's 100% of travel.
Okay. Anybody disagree with Dan? Okay. Just so we're clear, this is a travel by rule. And this is why we want to identify the pivot foot, because he stops his dribble. His right foot is his pivot foot. So what can't they do with their pivot foot? They cannot pick it up and put it back down on the floor. So this is a travel, and often a missed travel. Again, if he keeps his right foot in the air and spins and shoots, that's a legal play. But because he replants his foot, this is a travel. And they make it clear, this is a travel. And I'm kind of giving you the reason for it. Again, once you establish your pivot foot, you cannot move your pivot foot, meaning lift it up and put it back down, or completely move its position. So this is a travel, and this is an often missed one because it happens real quick. I'm going to say this, and this is going to be a pretty definitive statement. Probably 99% of spin moves at the high school level are travels. The problem with spin moves at the high school level, especially with Cruiser 2, is they're really hard to see because you are not always seeing where the ball is and where the foot is being established. Sometimes it does just step out to you. But for example, the trail in this play is probably the only one that can call this. The lead is not in a position to call this because they don't know when they've stopped their dribble. So if this happens and opens up to the lead is not going to be in a position in a 2-person crew. Even in a 3-person crew, this would be very hard for a 3-person crew for this to be done. Other than the trail in this case. This is a traveling violation. Okay.
Hey Jeff.
Go ahead.
Jeff, this is Paul Schaefer. I just have a question for those of you that the veteran referees that have done college games, I watch college ball, and I see, you know, they play a lot of these offenses around the perimeter nowadays. But if you watch the feet of the guards on the outer circle, they'll catch the ball and they move their pivot feet probably 90% of the time, either turning to pass or turning to dribble or whatever, and it never gets called. And I'm just curious, at the college, I know this gets away from high school level, but at the college level, is that something different you're looking at?
Let me say this. The college level has a different interpretation of how they want us to call that. The college levels, there's several moves or infractions that they've kind of said that if we're not sure about, they don't want us to call. That's one of them. They don't want you nitpicking traveling violations at the college level. Spin moves, Euro steps, they kind of want us to be sure. That doesn't mean they're not travels, and that doesn't mean that we don't call them if they're obvious. They just don't want us to make up violations because we think it's there. They want us to be almost 110% certainty of those plays. And it's just one of those things that's different. And at the NBA level, the NBA has a different rule almost entirely. They have what they count steps at their level. We don't at the high school. The rule is actually the same at the NCAA men's, and the NCAA women's is the same as high school. But and I'm gonna say this: I think traveling is the hardest rule to officiate because players are now doing all these quick things. But if we have an obvious violation, which I think this one is, and we call it, I think we're better off. I just think we are. And usually what will happen is they'll stop doing it. But keep in mind that when you see them doing this and you call these, you're going to get blowback from participants saying that's a legal move. And they won't tell you why it's a legal move. They'll just say it's a legal move. And they'll argue with you. I remember I called a game last year. I called the same spin move travel on the player. And it was a pulse travel. It wasn't one of these where he does it real quick. He's setting up, stops his dribble, kind of does a two-step, spins, went to the basket every time they were travels. And I even had a partner try to tell me they weren't travels. But I literally went back and looked at every one of them plays, and they were travels. And usually when I call the first one, I don't have to call another one like that. But this kid was hard-headed and athletic, and the coach didn't understand the rule. And that's the other thing that you're going to, and that's why I'm glad you brought that up, Paul, because guys, you got to understand, you're officiating people who watch television. And because they watch television, they think that their rules knowledge comes strictly from television. It does not come from any other place. So keep that in mind. And you will be debating them, or they will try to debate you about plays that you call when it's clear. They'll say, well, he took 1.5 steps. What's 1.5 steps? It's all about the pivot foot. It has nothing to do with steps. Because I can take 10 steps. If I take 10 steps with the right foot, and not my pivot foot, then that's a legal move. But that's the kind of thing that you will deal with when you deal with coaches and players.
Hey, Jeff.
And that's why a lot of times we don't call them. Yes.
Hey, this is actually Clarence Cooper. I see some people in there got my name popping up on the screen. But anyway, another thing, just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying too, you have to remember a lot of these kids have trainers, and the trainers are teaching them moves at the high school, at the college or pro level or FIBA level, because, they're trying to teach these kids different moves, to counteract the defensive strategies that they may encounter. So, that's just something to keep in mind, to make sure that anytime a person catches the ball, that your eyes pick up the feet so that way you can know if they traveled or not. And it's called what we call sequencing plays. Just like there's sequencing when we officiate jump shot shooters, there's a sequence of steps that we need to follow to make sure that we, protect that shooter, when they're airborne and returning back to the floor. Same thing with the travel. You need to sequence those plays so that you can understand how to pick up the travel.
Okay, let me get to the couple of these others. I want to show these real quick because this is a play. These are plays that you're going to see that are going to be the ones that you're going to have the most discussions about. So here's apparently a jump stop play. Okay. Anybody think this is a legal move?
It is a legal move
Okay, why is it a legal move?
because his pivot foot came up and never came back down before he attempted to try.
Okay. Anybody think this is a travel? Okay. That's why we're showing this. Is this a legal move? It is not. He does a jump stop, guys. He jumps backwards. It's technically a jump stop. So because he commits a jump stop, when you commit a jump stop off of the dribble, I'm sorry. When you stop your dribble, you're allowed to move your foot and land on two. Sorry about that. So he stopped with his left foot, jumped back on two. Once he jumps back on two, neither foot is the pivot. The only thing he can do is lift up his foot and shoot. If he can jump from both of them and shoot or pass. But is when he lifts up a foot and comes back down, that is a travel. So technically, this is a traveling violation. And I'm saying this technically because this is probably one that you're not going to see called very often because either we haven't identified the pivot foot or we're not aware of what is taking place. So again, what I said was because he jumped backwards, landed on two. Now he has no legal jump stop. This is the only time that the foot that you stop your dribble with is not your pivot foot because because the rules allow you to commit what they call a jump stop. Okay, now the difference is there are two types of jump stop. This is the one. The other type of jump stop is if I catch the ball in the air, I didn't jump off of one foot, I catch the ball in the air, then I land on two. If that's what you thought he did, then he could do just what he did. He could step with either foot because the first foot he picks up is the non-pivot foot, and then he can put that foot back down. He just has to keep the other foot as a pivot foot. And again, this is close. But by rule, if he did this the way that they are saying he did this is an illegal move. And I would say this, don't call travels because they look funny. If you think it looks funny and you're not sure, I would rather you pass on this. Be sure when you have a travel. Do not nitpick these travels. Because the other thing that we do a lot is we call a lot of travels that aren't travels at the high school level. Okay. We try to get through all these plays and we'll be done for the night. Player receives a pass, attempts a successful three-point shot that wins the game. Is this a legal play? And this is why we got to be sure about these plays. Does anybody not have this, or does anybody have a travel? Let's start there. Anybody? Well, this is not a travel, or this is not a legal play according to them. Okay, receives the ball with the right foot on the floor, places the left foot on the floor, which he establishes the pivot foot. This aspect of the play is legal, but the ball handler lifts the right foot, places it back on the floor, and releases the shot. This is a traveling violation. And this is how close these are. So look at how he's doing this. Now, I'm going to be honest. This is probably one I would not see as a travel. Because also the other thing you have to decide is, does he have possession right there? And especially where that official is located, he's got to know that the other foot is not on the ground. This is real tight. But I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just telling you it's one that probably most of us would not see as a travel, especially live. But this is what you need to do every time that they catch the ball. You need to say, which one's a pivot foot? And if you do that consistently, you'll probably get more of them right. But they say this is a travel. It's real close. I'm not saying what to call. I'm just saying understand when you call them what you see. Okay. Same thing. Player receives a pass, successful layup. Is this a legal play? This is another tough one. And we don't get to slow down. Anybody have this as a travel? Everybody has this as a legal play?
Travel.
Video quality is a little too low for me to even be able to see it.
Okay. Well, they're going to review it again, but this is not a legal play. This is a little more obvious, but this basically is how he caught the ball, which foot did he have the pivot foot? Pivot foot was established to the left. This is one that almost never gets called, but it probably is a travel. Not probably, it is a travel. Because when he catches it, one foot is clearly on the floor, the other one's clearly not. And then basically you got to decide when he had possession. So it looks like he has possession with the left foot on the floor. This is actually a travel. And you're gonna get crap when you call this a travel. I'm just gonna tell you that now. And this is maybe why a lot of officials don't call them, because if I take this basket away, it'll be big. And look at the time and score. So there's another aspect of why this will be big. Because they're up by 1. Now it's a 3-point game. You call this a travel, and obviously we saw this, what the result of this game was. That's a big point. So, not telling you, this is why we got to have courage to call these things, and we also got to know what we're looking at. Okay. I think this is the last one. After securing the rebound, player lifts a pivot foot, throws a pass to a teammate. Is this a legal play? Okay.
That one was obvious.
What was obvious? What was it?
She lifted that foot right before she passed. She lifted the pivot foot right before she made that pass back behind her.
So you got a traveling violation?
I do.
Okay.
Yep, traveling.
Anybody not have this as a traveling violation?
I thought she could lift it, but she just can't put it back down before passing it.
You tell me.
That's what I'm going with. Yes, that's a legal play.
So you got a legal play?
Yeah, I got a legal play.
Okay. Anybody else opinion on this?
How about dogs? Oh. I brought Big Mary.
I thought by our ruling that we couldn't lift our pivot foot.
Whoever's got their TV moving, to put on mute so I can hear everybody.
Get any hands off hands or New York style pizza with any.
Okay.
If she
This
lifted
is a
the pivot,
legal play. This is a legal play. This is a legal play because she had a legal pivot foot. She lifted it up, but passed the ball before it returned to the floor. That is why it's legal. So she had both feet on the floor when she established the possession. So she lifted it and passed. That is a legal play. So that's why we say we got to understand. And I will say this, if you're struggling with pivot foot, identify it. If you identify the pivot foot, 9 times out of 10, travels are going to be pretty easy for you, whether they're obvious or not. Because if you start doing that, and you should do it every possession, every time they have catch a pass, every time they stop their dribble or start a dribble, if you know what the pivot foot is, you can make a decision about those plays. It's that simple. So, again, kind of talked about the start to foul. So we talked about that a little bit. Violation, in this case, is a travel. Make eye contact or make sure your partner doesn't have something different, because you could have other violations other than a travel. You could have something else that could take place. So make sure that we get those and make those decisions. Okay. Any questions?
Nobody got questions?
I actually do have a question about that. Because I was seeing a video about traveling at the start of the dribble. So at the start of a dribble, I know you cannot lift your pivot foot before you dribble the ball. But does the dribble start when a ball first touches the floor or when it leaves the offensive player's hand?
Clarence?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I'm kind of moving around, so I'm here, but I didn't hear. You might want to answer that for me, Jeff.
Oh. Okay. So ask the question again, just so I understand. I wanted him to answer, but go ahead.
Does the dribble start when the ball leaves the offensive player's hand or when the ball first touches the floor?
If the ball is thrown to the floor,
Okay.
and they are clearly going to, the ball hits the floor and comes back to their hand, if they lifted their pivot foot before, when all that took place, before the dribble started, it is considered a travel.
All right.
And that is based off of a new interpretation, because the other interpretation is, so if I jump up in the air and let's say I think I'm going to pass or shoot, but I have not had a dribble, or I've had a dribble and now I put the ball down to the floor, if I never touch the ball again, or somebody else touches the ball again, that is not considered a travel.
Yeah.
So in the basic way, and this is a new interpretation. So if I lift my pivot foot and I clearly am going to dribble a ball, if that ball comes back to my hand and I lifted my pivot foot, that's when the violation takes place. So and it's moments. It doesn't take a long time for that to happen, but that is actually now the new interpretation. As a matter of fact, that's the interpretation at the NCAA level too. They, believe it or not, guys, the NCAA and the National Federation talk a lot now. I went to a rules meeting in Indianapolis a couple weekends ago, and that was something the editor for the NCAA talked about. They actually talk a lot now. And if you have never been where their major offices in Indianapolis, the buildings are literally right next to each other. There might be a walkway that separates the two buildings. Maybe a little river, I think, might separate the actual two buildings. So they now talk a lot. And a lot of interpretations that we have now have come directly from their conversations. Because now the NCAA changed their continuous motion based off of what the National Federation was doing, because they were the most restrictive. So now they basically almost look the same. But I say that to you because you may see something at one level and you'll hear people say, well, the college rule is different. Well, it may not be. It might be the exact same. And that dribble aspect that I just talked about was something that they addressed in both codes. and made it sure that the interpretation is now you have to touch the ball again. So once you start your dribble, yes, it's a violation, but if I didn't start a dribble or a pass, they want to make sure that you touch the ball again before there's a violation call. So, yes. Great question.
I have a question
Any other
for you,
question?
Jeffrey. I have a question. This is Bryce again.
Mhm.
Being around the basketball as long as I have, you see different things, different players, as you said, trying to get smarter than we are as officials. If a player was to act like they're going to pass the ball, goes ahead with the passing motion, but they're first to touch it, that would be a travel, correct? If they pass it forward, they're the first to touch it closest to the basket, it would be a travel because they didn't pass it to anybody else.
Okay, let me ask you a question. What's the definition of a dribble?
Ball touching the ground and then coming back up to your hand, touching your hand.
Okay, so let me ask you this. In your example, have I dribbled previously?
No.
Okay, so if I throw the ball and it hits the floor and nobody else has touched it, what did I just do?
It'd be considered a dribble.
Okay,
but
so
but if it's in the air and you catch it, is it a travel if it never touches the floor?
well, let's start with the first scenario that I talked about. If I throw the ball to the floor, by definition, I believe it is throwing, batting, pushing the ball to the floor. So if it hits the floor, and I have not dribbled, I can always go get that basketball.
Okay.
Always go get that basketball. If that was a deliberate act. So let me say this to y'all. There's no such thing as passing the ball to yourself. Please don't ever use that terminology.
Okay.
Because I can always pass the ball, but if that is by rule considered a dribble. And if I dribbled before and I do that, the violation that I've committed is a double dribble. The other aspect of that play is if I feel that like I'm trying to pass the ball and I catch myself and be like, oh, no, I don't want to pass that ball, and it slips out my hand, what did I do? By rule, I fumbled the basketball. Can I go get a fumble? Yes, I can. I can always get my fumble, even if I've dribbled before. That's because a fumble, by definition, is an accidental loss of the ball. I'm not doing it on purpose. You see this all the time where sometimes a player trying to make a pass, or he look like he made a pass, she made a pass, and their teammate moves in another direction, and like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't want to do that. They can go get that basketball.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Well, since no one else has questions, we're assuming everybody got some good information tonight. Thank you, Jeff, for the wonderful presentation. Hopefully you guys learned some things and, watch some videos that can help increase your knowledge and your skills. That's the whole goal of what we're doing. So again, try to keep watching film, study it, break it down. We'll be having more plays and topics to talk about in our future meetings. One thing we definitely want to let you guys know, that we do have a YouTube channel strictly for IHSA basketball officials that we've started recently, which has a ton of plays on there. We'll be adding plays throughout the year, and year after year, we'll be adding more and more plays. So if you go to YouTube, type in IHSA basketball officials, you'll see different playlists of different categories of plays. So again, this is just an opportunity to keep you engaged with the various types of plays, so that way you can constantly improve your skill set and your knowledge. All right. So with that being said, we're not going to hold you guys up. Thank you for being on the call tonight. And we'll be back next week.
Thanks again, guys.
Thanks a lot. Have a good evening.
Go Cubs.
Yeah, it's a tie game right now.
Boo!
It's a tie game right now.
I'm a Cardinals fan. That's why I'm saying that.
Oh, I know.
We're watching the playoffs. I'm not a part of the playoffs.
That was